This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, so good morning again, everyone. Thank you for attending in person and signing in online as well to our first nonprofit chamber council for 2021. The chamber councils and nonprofit are sponsored by Gadsden Public Library this year. So we thank the Gadsden Public Library for their support of the chamber and sponsorship of this series. We actually have Craig Scott, the director at the library, here in person today. Craig, if you'd like to step in front of the camera, you can say a few words, and let me unmute the microphone really quick. We passed. Be patient as we pass off the mic to Craig.
Very good. How's this, Will? Looks good? Everybody can see me. Hey, I'm Craig. My last name is Scott, so I got two first names, right? I just call myself Library Guy. I was the library director and became that in 2018. You might ask, why is the library involved as a nonprofit member of the council? Well, the library's been around since 1906, and we are a department of the city of Gadsden, but we have a nonprofit side. That's our Gadsden Public Library Foundation, a very important part of the library. The funds that the fundraising that the foundation does really goes in big part to our programming that we do. And of course, programming's been virtual pretty much this past year, but the foundation's a real important part of the library. And the library's very honored this year to support our council and be the sponsor this year. Our first meeting with Ruth as our guest speaker from United Way, I thought it would be very appropriate for me to wear my United Way mask. And we are going to have another meeting in May. I think it's May 4th. Christy Knowles has been invited to be our guest speaker for that. And Christy will be talking about legal issues as it relates to nonprofits. And then we're going to have another meeting in September. And Will and I have been talking about guest speaker for that to be named future date. Okay, September 7, May 4. And with that, I think it's also appropriate with me wearing the United Way mask, with Ruth here as our speaker, that I think a word should be said about Joan Hightower. As you all know, Joan helped me immensely with our foundation. She's helped all of you, I'm sure, at some point in the past, a real community person. And I thought it'd be very appropriate for us to maybe take a minute and just a moment of silence in Joan's honor. Thank you. And Ruth, or Will, hand it back to you. Hand it to Ruth here.
So, Craig, thank you so much to the Gadsden Public Library for sponsoring this year's nonprofit councils, and thank you for saying a few words too in that moment of silence for Joan. Today's topic is breaking down silos and agency collaboration. We are lucky enough to have Miss Ruth Moffatt joining us, who's been recently named the Executive Director of United Way. So, Ruth, let me unmute you, and we'll turn it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Craig almost got me there in that moment of silence because we know that Joan was a huge community advocate, and many of us in this room, she's mentored and she's taught in some frame or in some way. And so when you talk about collaborations, who do you think about? One of those people you think about is Joan Hightower. She was big on that community collaboration. So you see that our subject today is about breaking down those silos. And we went ahead and just X that out because we are speaking today that if we have not already done this, starting today, we are knocking those silos down, and we're going to talk about how we can collaborate, how our agencies can collaborate even better than what we're doing. And let's see if I can get the, nope. It does not want to go. Am I hitting the right thing? Maybe it sat still so long it just okay. All right, technology. Okay, so when we think in terms of silos, I kind of want to talk about natural silos first, before we talk about silos as it relates to that business mindset. When you think about silos, and there are different types, there can be technology silos, there can be silos that grain go into. So for our conversation today, I want to talk about silos that grain goes into. Notice with the silos that they have, it's one way to put the grain in, and it's only one way to extract the grain. It can only go in through the top, and it can only be extracted through the bottom. Or some of your modern day silos, they use what's called augers, which actually it's a long metal bar that pulls into the silo and it drops that grain down into there. But the thing about using augers is that it can be really dangerous because you're using huge, heavy equipment. And not only that, you have the thing where grain can spoil in there. If you don't have the proper oxygen going through that silo, then it can spoil. So these are some things about your natural silos that we want to keep mindful even when we think about business in silos. So let's talk about the business mentality as it relates to silos. And it says that this is a mentality that is characterized by individuals or divisions that withhold information from others in the organization for various reasons, which might include power struggles, it might be fear, it might be organizational inefficiency, or simply because we don't take the effort to share that information. So in thinking about our natural silos in business, if we operate in our one little section and we don't think about stretching beyond where we are, but doing it in a constructive manner, there's a way that we connect with others. We know that we have like our mission statement for what we do. We know that we have our vision for our organization, but how do we look at what we do and connect with someone else to do what we do a little bit better? And I'm going to expand on that a little bit more. Silos, the silo mentality, it can destroy trust, it can cut off communication, and it can also cause us to become very complacent. What do I mean by that? I'm over here in my little space. I'm doing my little thing. I don't want to expand it. I don't want to connect. I just want to sit here and do what I'm doing. Or the thing that we can sometimes do is end up in an area that is not our area. It's not my mission statement. It's not what I'm supposed to be doing. But because I have cut myself off, I'm in my own little box. I'm doing my own little thing. I've cut myself off from the rest of the community. And so now I'm not even tuned in to what's actually going on. So you see here an example of that. That silo mentality is actually counterproductive. Because when we think about productivity is that we're constantly moving forward, we're constantly progressing, and we're processing. The thing that this COVID world has taught us is that I cannot be in my own little section. Right? We had school systems who typically serve food during the time that children are in school, but then they had to look at a method that they could help some of the children who needed food to get that food. You had some of our nonprofit organizations that serve that provide utility assistance or rental assistance or things like that. But because you had a lot of people that were off work, and some of the clients, non-traditional clients that have never had to access services, now they needed those services. So we had to think outside of the box, think outside of the silo to be able to service those individuals. Having the silo mentality can prevent the full furtherance of the work. In other words, our work, if we're down in this box, we're limited in our ability to go forward. Our strategy may even become stagnant because we stay stuck where we are. It also limits growth and expansion, and it creates burnout. When you get to that point, I say it like this: when you get to that point where you feel so overwhelmed, that means the grace has lifted off of it. And likely you have now taken all of this on individually versus being with your team to help you to be able to do whatever it is that your organization does. So what is collaboration? Because we've talked about silos just a little bit, and silos is just being in my own space, doing my own thing, not looking at who I can expand with, or maybe I have an idea. I want to use an example before I move to collaboration. Well, it moves us into collaboration. When you think about homelessness, Homelessness is a huge issue that is not just a one agency issue. It deals with housing. How will we house those individuals? Who will do the case management? And then once they do the case management, who then takes the next piece? If that person needs to go into some type of treatment center, or if that is a veteran, or if that is economic instability, how do we address all of those different avenues? And then with that, bring them to a place that they are now able to be successful. So homelessness is a collaborative initiative that has to take place. No one individual can do that. And so understanding what my mission is, what my organization is here to do, how do I connect my organization with your organization so that we address a problem, what we call holistically. So collaboration is work in a practice whereby individuals work together for a common purpose to achieve a business benefit. What a benefit it would be for our community if we were able, when we're able to address that and to bring wholeness to it, where we're not addressing it top down, but bottom to the top, meaning we're getting to the root cause. And then once we come up with that, what we need to do, it's going to be effective because we've addressed it from the root. Collaboration enables individuals to work together to achieve a defined and a common business purpose, which is the same thing. So this is what we do oftentimes within our agencies. We all have a piece of the puzzle, whether it's an agency, whether it's non-profit or for-profit, we all have a piece of the puzzle. And as long as we stay right, like as this picture is, we can never really get to the whole. We have to literally get to the place to where we're able to come together and we're able to connect those pieces together so that we can then successfully take on any issue. And when we do this, when we connect, we're able to take on any issue and we're able to bring some resolution to those issues. So we actually want to be doing this. At a point, we're doing this because we're strategizing. We're thinking about what the issue is. If we're using homelessness, and most people that know me know that that's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I want to see us address that holistically. I want to see us come up with some good, clear things that we can launch forward in with homelessness, because if any part of our community is hurting, our whole community is hurting. And so at one point, this is where we are, but this is where we want to move to. We want to move to the place to where we're connecting those pieces. So let's talk about 5 rules for effective collaboration. And I love this. You can go to inc.com and actually find this article, and it is an amazing article because it really guides you in how you can move your team to success as it relates to collaboration. So the first one talks about getting aligned. So getting aligned is making sure that your team understands where we're going. So what is our vision? What are we here to do? And this allows us from we want to collaborate, but we want to make sure that we're staying within our mission. Because if my mission is to feed people, if that's our mission to feed people, then instead of trying to clothe people, I need to connect with somebody that's clothing people. And then we are amazing together because now we can feed them and clothe them versus me trying to take on someone else's mission. So getting aligned. And rather than just trying to make sure our team understand the size of it, we want to make them understand what's at stake. So what's at stake if I don't feed people? And we know what's at stake. We have a portion of our community that could possibly go without food. If my mission is to clothe them, what's at stake? We have a portion of our community that might not have access to that. So helping your team to understand what's really at stake, right? And so at the beginning of 2021, this is a good time for us to turn back to our teams and look at how are we aligned? Do we really understand the vision holistically? I know at United Way, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we really see the picture and how does this align with our vision. The next thing is to get structure. And so structure, it says collaboration will invariably cause chaos. So anytime you're trying to establish any type of structure, there is going to be some chaos there. Why? Because change is happening. And change, a really good friend of mine says this, and she's actually a colleague. She says, if change is good or bad, change is good, right? Think about that. Change is good or bad, change is good. Change is not always so easy, You think about New Year's resolutions. Well, I'm going to start getting up at 5 and I'm going to do my devotional. I'm going to do my exercise and I'm going to change my diet. You've created so much change that you might not, it may be a little more difficult to be successful at all of that change. But when you take it in steps and in process, you can achieve every one of those goals. So getting that structure, trying to get that structure, you got to know that it's going to be some chaos. But knowing that a plan is in place turns strategy into action. And it helps a team to commit to the project. So don't be afraid to address those difficult places. Will we have difficult conversations as it relates to homelessness? Yes, because you have different people with different ideals and different ideas about how we need to address that. But if we get the structure around it, then we're able to fill it with what needs to be filled. Think in terms of a home. You build the foundation, you build the structure, and then you fill it with what's needed. Get diverse. Now, when we see diversity, we automatically think about, do we have someone of a different, uh, uh, if they're African American, or do we have someone that's of a different race that's involved? But this diversity really deals with diversity of thought. So you know what you're trying to bring. So who do you have on your team that has that diversity of thought, which does sometimes deal with culture? But the thing that most readily comes to my mind is millennials. Millennials, they think differently than, I'm not a millennial, of course you know that, but I'm not a millennial. So my thinking is a little bit different. I like to say I'm a little bit more old school. I keep files at work on paper, on the computer, because it's easy to access. But I have a whole cabinet full of files because I like to have the paper in my hand. I have a Kindle that I could read on, but I want a book in my hand. Going through the Kindle where I just hit the button, it's just something about it that's just different for me. And so, but a lot of your millennials, they are very technology driven. And so who do you have on your team that has a diverse, that their thinking process is different from yours, that when they engage, they're going to bring a whole nother perspective to what you're doing. And so you cannot be afraid of that, because having those diverse individuals helps to unlock your challenge of whatever you're dealing with. Then get active. What is getting active? Getting active is turning your strategy, turning what you have on paper into the product. It's getting the product where it needs to be, which is going to have multiple pieces. And then also being human. So you got to know that collaboration requires constant nurturing, reassessment, patience, and also some compassion and respect for other individuals that have a different thought process. So I want everybody, I don't know what my time looks like, but I want everybody who's online, and even the people in here, if you don't have a piece of paper, get your phones out. And I want to do a quick little project that we can take back with us when we leave from this time of being together. And based on what we just talked about a minute ago, if there's no better time than right now. You notice that you have an empty puzzle, a puzzle field before you, but you have two pieces of the puzzle that's missing. So I want you to think in terms of for your organization, or in terms of, we can even think of our board, we can think of our staff. Who is it that you, or where are you, does your team understand your vision? Does your team understand the vision of your organization? Do they understand where you're moving the organization to? That's the question. And you have to answer that. And if they don't understand fully understand the vision, how can we better help them to understand? Remember, we started out talking about it being progressive. This any organization, for profit, nonprofit, it is progressive. It's growing. There was a time when Zoom, we didn't know a whole lot about Zoom. Now everybody knows about Zoom, including my grandchildren. They know how to get on Zoom because they have to do it for school. It's progressive. So how could you help your team to better understand the vision? If you think they understand it, how can you help them to understand better where you're going? Think about that for a minute. The next one is dealing with structure. How can you help your team, even though if you have a vision that you've had some difficulty in helping your team to align with, maybe you're having some difficulty in helping them to see the vision. How can we get ourselves to that place of structure around that? Especially if we're doing something that's new and different. If we're talking about homelessness, how do we create that where we understand, we get a leader in place and we understand that we're trying to get it to a place to where we're turning that into adding that structure, which is going to turn it into action. That strategy is going to turn it into action. And I'm going to tell us that I want to share with us that no matter who we are, even children want structure. They like structure. You know, if they don't have that structure, that's bothersome to them. They want structure, even though they fight against it sometimes. Now, here's the big one. Who is it that you don't have on your team that they think so differently? They think so differently. As a matter of fact, they may think so differently that you think, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know if we'd be able to move that meeting. But maybe that's the person you need, because that may be the person to unlock some areas that you never thought about, or you didn't even see that that area mattered. And I really want to give us a chance for that one, because know that this piece, the diverse piece, is what unlocks it for you. So an example of that would be if we don't engage millennials, what happens? They think differently. They don't give the same. They don't want to engage the same. So if we don't engage them, what happens as an organization? We have the risk of losing a whole segment of our population. So think about that as it relates to diversity. And then what do you need to do in order to get active? How can you move from this place of, now I've thought about my strategy, I've put some things, I've added some structure, I now have this diversity. What is my process for getting active? What is the first thing I want to do to move it from this thought process to now where we can now become active? And how do we keep that human side always present? I think in the nonprofit world, it's always important. One of the things that I've always done when I was with 211 was to always try to start with some type of meaningful quote that caused you to think about, think about your work. Or, one of the quotes is, let's see, said that alone we can do little, but together we can do so much. Is that Helen Keller? I think so. But thinking about how the work that we do, it really does make a huge, huge difference. What would our community look like without your organization? What would our community look like without your business? Now think about what our community looks like when we are joined together and all the pieces are neatly fit. And we're operating as we are set to operate. Like the banks, they have a clear focus of what they're doing. The colleges, they have a clear focus of what they're doing. But what if they decided they were going to do something different and not operate within the scope of their mission? Then it could really be a wreck for our community. At United Way, this is what we say. We say we see a safe community with strong families working together, successful children moving toward becoming productive citizens, and a community where the disabled are reaching their potential and senior citizens can maintain their independence. We recognize a community of diverse people with a shared vision of caring for one another. So this is our vision at United Way. So based on our vision, then we may be that community convener. We may be the organization that sees that unmet area, and then we convene the community towards that need, not so that we can become the distributor of that, but so that we can help those organizations that do that work to do that work better. It doesn't mean that they're not doing a great job. It just means that together we can do so much more. And alone we have some limitations of the things that we can do. And so understanding the vision of your organization, because everything that we do, we have to be drawn back to the vision. I can remember so well with 211, sometimes Joan had to drive me back to the vision. Remember what your vision is. Remember what it is that you are called to do through 211, so that you stay aligned within that vision. And that is the structure that helps you to move forward in what you're doing. And then lastly, I want to say this, unless there are some questions. One of the things that that Joan said all the time, and it left an imprint within me, and I believe it so strongly. And that is, she said, if it doesn't matter who gets the credit, we can be phenomenal. We can be great. So that means that United Way can be the convener and no one ever know that, and distribute what needs to be distributed to help another agency to be able to fulfill whatever it is that they're doing. So that is thinking collaboratively. It's thinking, outside of the silo. You know what? Maybe your organization has a strong grant writer that can write that grant and then turn around and give that grant to that agency so they can do what they do on a larger capacity. That's what agency collaboration is all about. And I think if 2020 taught us anything, it taught us that we must collaborate. We cannot afford to stay. We cannot afford to stay in our own little silos and not come outside of that for the betterment of our community. Because I'm telling you, we will do great things together. So I think that's the end. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments?
And if anyone has any questions or comments, put those in the chat. I posted that there earlier.
No. Does anybody in here have questions, comments, statements? Thank you.
Good job, Ruth.
Thank
It's not
you.
really a question, but why don't you tell them about what's the organization that brings nonprofits together for lunch one month?
Oh, community services.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Jessica. So community services, and we didn't meet a whole lot in 2020. As with a lot of things, we had to change things up a little bit, but community services is all about for-profit and nonprofit coming together in one setting. So we meet once a month. We used to meet at Gadsden State, but we've kind of moved that around. I think one of our last meetings in 2020 was with Alabama Department of Public Health, and they were talking about some things, some do's and don'ts with the coronavirus. So we've been meeting via Zoom, but it is a great opportunity for individuals to come together and hear about things that are going on in the community, hear about community initiatives and things like that. And it's a great way to also see where if my organization needed a particular thing or needed to plug somewhere, it's a great way to plug too. So community services is all about us coming together and literally hearing about what's going on in the community and how we can connect and all of those different things. It's to me, it's networking as well as hearing about what's going on in the community, but it's also networking. There have been so many times that things have come up and you sat and you think, who needs to be in this meeting? Who do we need to bring to the table to talk about this? And community services is a way to really understand what organizations is doing and what's going on in our community. So it meets once a month, and I guess we could send out Tracy Pondick typically sends out our communications for that. And so we'll be jumping back on and getting that going. I think all of us will be glad when the COVID is over and we can start back meeting in person and return back to that. But there are so many lessons that hopefully we have learned in 2020 that we will carry forward into 2021. So, yeah. No other questions or anything?
Well, we had a comment
Okay.
from Brenda Johnson. She said, thank you. She said she loves the point regarding diversity of thought.
Yeah.
We often miss so much when we do not intentionally surround ourselves with voices that are unlike our own.
Yes, that's great. And that's why I think I spent a little time there, because we talk about diversity, but we really need to think about diversity of thought, and we need to be open to that. I think that is that goes along with, there was a time when maybe individuals my age, maybe a little older, were not open to technology. They were terrified of technology. But now some grandparents, that's the way they see their grandchildren, is through technology. And so sometimes we have to be open to those things, because really what that is about, that's about change. And change is when you step outside of what we are accustomed to is where we feel comfortable at. So sometimes it's good to be uncomfortable in the room. Yeah. Nothing else.
I don't see any more questions or comments. Here's the link. This has been recorded today, so there's the link if you want to share that with anyone. We'll post that later as well. It'll be downloaded later today once the recording is finished processing. I don't see any more questions or comments in the chat.
Well, let me say this before I sat down. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the people that are online and the people that are in this room. You know, I'm going to go back to the Joan Hightower thing, just because I want to thank all the calls that we've received at United Way, all the well wishes that we've received at United Way. We so appreciate it, because like everyone else, Joan truly, she was our mentor, she was our friend. And I think one of the takeaways that we have at United Way is that we feel one of the best ways that we could honor her is to continue the work. And that's what we aim to do. We will continue the work in a spirit of excellence. And so we are thankful for the opportunity to have had Joan in our lives, to be that light, to be that ember. Now we take that light forward. But we appreciate you, everyone, so much, because it has really been a well of love. And I know her family appreciates that too. So thank you. Oh, so the celebration of life, the family is doing a private, they will do a private service with just their immediate family. But in May, if COVID is gone and we're able to get back out into the community, they will do a celebration of life in May with the community. So that some information will be forthcoming as we move forward according to what's going on in our world at that time, if COVID is a little more under control. And I just want to speak that it will be a little more under control, and we'll be able to get out a little bit more. So that's where that's at. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Well, Ruth, thank you so much again for presenting today. Thank you, Gadsden Library and Craig, for joining us today and sponsoring this year's series Chamber Councils. We'll have another Chamber Council with Christy Knowles, some advice on legal advice for nonprofits in May, as Craig mentioned earlier. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and turn the recording off. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Have a fantastic week.